I stood in front of the mirror in my wedding dress, holding back tears as I read the prenuptial agreement one last time. My hands trembled, and the paper crinkled under my tight grip. 3 hours before, I was supposed to say, "I do," and here I was, being forced to sign away my dreams. I'm destiny, and this should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the day I learned exactly what kind of family I was marrying into. "Darling, you're not having second thoughts, are you?" Mark appeared in the doorway, looking handsome in his tuxedo, but wearing that familiar worried expression I'd grown to hate. "Father says everything needs to be finalized before the ceremony." "Your father can wait," I snapped, then immediately regretted my tone. I need a minute, Mark. This isn't what we discussed." He stepped closer, placing his hands on my shoulders. "It's just business, sweetheart. You know how important the family company is to Father. He just wants to protect our interests." "Our interests? Or his control?" I turned to face him. The original agreement was about assets. I waved the paper. "This is about forcing me to be a housewife. I have to give up any entrepreneurial pursuits or lose everything in a divorce. How is that fair? Father believes a woman's primary focus should be her family. You knew this about him." Mark's voice carried that patronizing tone that made my skin crawl. A knock at the door interrupted us. "5 minutes," Bruce's authoritative voice boomed through the wood. "The papers need to be signed, Destiny. Don't make this difficult." I caught my reflection again. The elegant white dress, the carefully styled hair, the makeup hiding my exhaustion from countless arguments about this very moment. My phone buzzed in my purse, and I fished it out to find a text from Marley. "Whatever happens, remember what we talked about. Check under your bouquet after the ceremony. You've got this, girl." "Destiny," Mark prompted, holding out a pen. I took it, my mind racing. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built in secret over the past year, my fledgling company, my dreams, my independence, all of it hung in the balance. Bruce thought he was clever, trying to clip my wings before I could fly. "Fine," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "I'll sign." The scratch of pen on paper felt like nails on a chalkboard. Mark smiled, relief washing over his features as he took the document. "I'll get this to Father. See you at the altar, beautiful." The moment he left, I slumped into a chair, careful not to wrinkle the dress. Marley burst in seconds later, her bridesmaid dress swishing around her legs. "Tell me you didn't," she said, eyes wide. "I did what I had to do." I stood, straightening my spine. But Bruce Russell doesn't know me as well as he thinks he does. "Girl, when he finds out—" "He won't," I cut her off. "Not until it's too late. The company's registered under a different name, the investors are all silent partners, and everything's through shell corporations. I've covered my tracks." Marley handed me my bouquet, a knowing look in her eyes. "There's something else you should know about the Russells. I found out—" Another knock interrupted us. "It's time," my mother called through the door. "Tell me later," I whispered to Marley as we hurried to take our positions. The ceremony passed in a blur of white tulle and hollow promises. I said "I do" to a man I loved but didn't trust, joined a family that saw me as property rather than a person, and smiled for photographs that would forever capture this beautiful lie. At the reception, while Mark was distracted by well-wishers, I finally checked under my bouquet. There, tucked into the ribbon, was a folded note from Marley. "Bruce Russell's empire isn't as solid as everyone thinks. His new VP John has been looking for a way out. Thought you might want to know. Time to show them what you're really made of." I smiled, tucking the note into my bodice. Bruce thought this prenup would keep me in line, force me to be the obedient wife he wanted for his son. He had no idea that he'd just given me all the motivation I needed to bring his empire crashing down around him. Let him think he'd won. Let him believe I'd submit to his rules and expectations. I'd sign his papers, play his game, be the perfect daughter-in-law on the surface. But underneath, I was already several moves ahead in a game he didn't even know we were playing. "To the happy couple," Bruce's voice boomed across the reception hall, raising his glass in a toast. I raised mine in return, meeting his satisfied smirk with a practiced smile. To family, I replied, even as I silently added, and to karma. 6 months into my marriage, I'd perfected the art of deception. Every morning, I kissed Mark goodbye as he left for the family company, then transformed our guest house into my secret headquarters. Today was different, though. Today was the first major client meeting for my startup, albeit under an alias. Your coffee, Mrs. Perfect Housewife, Marley teased, handing me a steaming cup as she entered through the back door. Ready to switch into CEO mode? God, yes. I kicked off my house slippers and pulled my power suit from its hiding place in a garment bag. The investors are meeting us at 11. Did you bring the presentations? All here. She patted her laptop bag. But heads up, I saw Bruce's car heading this way when I turned onto your street. What? I nearly spilled my coffee. He never comes here during the day. I rushed to the window, spotting his Mercedes pulling into the driveway. Quick, grab everything and hide in the bathroom. I'll get rid of him. I barely had time to throw on an apron over my business attire before the doorbell rang. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door with my best surprise smile. Bruce, what an unexpected pleasure. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. Just checking on my daughter-in-law, making sure you're settling into your role properly. His eyes scanned the living room, always searching for imperfections. Of course, I was just about to start preparing lunch for Mark. I gestured toward the kitchen, praying he wouldn't notice the financial documents I'd forgotten to hide on the coffee table. Wonderful. He picked up a magazine from the side table. Though I notice you're still subscribing to Business Weekly. Hardly appropriate reading material for a Russell wife, wouldn't you say? I forced a laugh. Oh, that's Mark's. I just like looking at the pretty office furniture in the ads. A toilet flushed upstairs, and I silently thanked Marley for her quick thinking in establishing our cover story. Marley's here. Bruce's expression soured. That girl's a bad influence. Always was, even in college. She's just helping me plan Mark's birthday party. I lied smoothly. Would you like some coffee? No time, but speaking of parties, he sat down uninvited. The annual company gala is next month. I expect you to take charge of the planning, show everyone what a proper Russell wife can do. I'd be honored. I smiled, already calculating how I could use the event to my advantage. My phone buzzed, a text from our potential investors asking where we were. I discreetly silenced it. One more thing, Bruce added, standing. I heard rumors about a new tech startup making waves in our market. Some woman CEO nobody's heard of. Keep your ears open at those housewife lunches you attend. Any information could be useful. I walked him to the door, maintaining my perfect daughter-in-law facade. Of course, Bruce. I'll let you know if I hear anything. The moment his car disappeared, Marley burst out of hiding. That was too close. Also, we're now officially late. No, I said, grabbing my briefcase. We're exactly where we need to be. Bruce just gave me an idea. 20 minutes later, we walked into a private room at the city's most exclusive restaurant. 5 investors waited, along with John, Bruce's VP, who'd been secretly feeding us information. Gentlemen, I said, stepping to the head of the table. Thank you for your patience. Today, we're not just discussing a new tech platform. We're talking about disrupting an entire industry that's been dominated by dinosaurs for too long. Bold words, one investor said, but why should we trust an unknown? I pulled up our projections. Because while the old guard was busy underestimating people like me, I built this. I clicked through slides showing our beta test results. 300% growth in 6 months, all under the radar. And next month, at the Russell Corp Gala, we go public. That's risky, John warned. Bruce will be too busy watching his empire crumble to stop us. I laid out my plan, watching their expressions shift from skepticism to interest. 2 hours later, we had their commitment. $30 million in funding, contingent on our public launch. You're either brilliant or crazy, Marley said as we headed back. Maybe both. I'm just getting started. I checked my phone to find 3 missed calls from Mark. The real question is, who's going to crack first, my marriage or Bruce's company? Speaking of cracks, Marley hesitated. I overheard something at the country club yesterday about Bruce and some questionable dealings in his past, the kind that could ruin more than just business. I pulled over, turning to face her. Tell me everything. As she spoke, I realized the game was bigger than I'd imagined. Bruce hadn't just tried to control my future. He'd built his entire empire on secrets and lies. And now, I had the power to expose them all. My phone buzzed again. Mark calling. It was time to go home and play the perfect wife, at least for a little while longer. The Russell Corp lobby buzzed with activity as I brought Mark his forgotten lunch, playing the dutiful wife while secretly scanning for familiar faces. That's when I spotted Cade, my brother-in-law, watching me with an intensity that made me nervous. Destiny. He caught up to me by the elevators. We need to talk, privately. I hesitated, clutching Mark's lunch bag. I really should get this too. It's about Bruce. His voice dropped. And what he's planning. My heart skipped, but I kept my expression neutral. Fine, 5 minutes. We took the elevator to the empty conference floor. Through the glass walls, the city sprawled beneath us, oblivious to the power plays happening in this building. I know what you're doing, Cade said without preamble. The startup, the secret meetings, all of it. My fingers tightened on my purse strap. I don't know what you're talking about. Cut the act. He pulled out his phone, showing me photos. Me entering investor meetings, Marley carrying documents, John leaving my office. I'm not the enemy here, Destiny, but you need to be more careful. Are you blackmailing me? I'm warning you, Bruce knows something's happening in his market. He's hired private investigators. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your husband isn't as loyal as you think. Check his deleted emails. A friend. Who else knows? I demanded, showing Cade the message. Not from me. He ran a hand through his hair. But listen, Bruce didn't just strong-arm you with that prenup. He's done it before. To my wife, to other family members. He's got dirt on everyone. Why are you telling me this? Because someone needs to stop him. And you, he smiled slightly, you might actually be smart enough to do it. The elevator dinged, and Mark stepped out. Destiny? Cade? What's going on? Just bumped into each other, I said smoothly, holding up the lunch bag. Brought your favorite. Mark looked between us suspiciously. Father's looking for you, Cade. Something about the merger documents. Right. Cade headed for the elevator, but not before giving me a meaningful look. Be careful who you trust, Destiny. That evening, I sat in my home office, Mark's laptop open before me. His password had been easy to guess, our wedding date. The deleted emails loaded slowly, each one a potential landmine. Oh my God, I whispered, reading through threads between Mark and Bruce. They'd been discussing ways to keep me occupied with charity work, planning to set me up with meaningless projects to keep me from getting dangerous ideas. A soft knock startled me. Destiny? It was Mark. I quickly closed the laptop. Come in. He entered, looking troubled. Father wants us over for dinner tomorrow. Says it's important. Of course. I stood, kissing his cheek. Everything okay? Just business stuff. A new competitor's causing problems. Father's worried. I kept my face carefully blank. Anything I can do? Actually, he hesitated. Father thinks you might be helpful. Apparently, this competitor is a woman, someone who moves in social circles. He thought you might have heard something. My phone buzzed again. Another anonymous text. Bruce knows more than he's letting on. Watch your back. Destiny. Mark touched my arm. You seem distracted lately. Just tired. I forced a smile. Planning the gala is a lot of work. About that, he shifted uncomfortably. Father wants to move it up, says we need to make a big announcement. What kind of announcement? Can't say yet, but it's big. Could change everything. After he left, I called Marley. We need to move faster. Bruce is planning something. Already on it, she replied. But you need to see this. Remember that dirt I mentioned? I found proof. Meeting in 20 at the usual place. I grabbed my keys, then stopped. A new email had just arrived from another anonymous account. Your company isn't the only thing at risk. Some secrets are worth killing for. My hand shook as I deleted it. The stakes were getting higher, and I wasn't sure who to trust anymore. Cade seemed genuine, but he was still Bruce's family. The anonymous messages could be warnings or traps. One thing was certain, Bruce was making his move, and I needed to be ready. The gala wasn't just going to be an announcement, it was going to be a battlefield. I texted Marley back. On my way. Time to show Bruce what happens when you underestimate the wrong woman. As I drove through the darkening city, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The game had changed. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about survival. The restaurant's private room felt like a pressure cooker as I sat across from Evangeline, my supposed rival in the tech industry. Bruce had no idea he'd just introduced me to my perfect smokescreen. So, Evangeline stirred her coffee. You're the mysterious wife I've heard so much about. Bruce seems quite interested in my company lately. And I'm interested in why you agreed to meet me. I slid a folder across the table. Especially given these numbers. She opened it, her eyes widening at the documents Cade had secretly provided. Where did you get these? Let's just say we have a mutual problem wearing expensive suits and wielding too much power. Bruce, she practically spat the name. He's been trying to force a hostile takeover of my company. These projections would give him everything he needs. Unless, I leaned forward, we help each other. The waiter arrived with our lunch, and we paused until he left. I could see the wheels turning in Evangeline's head as she processed my unspoken proposition. You're her, aren't you? She lowered her voice. The actual competitor Bruce is really worried about. I smiled. What would you say if I were? Before she could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Mark. Where are you? Father's called an emergency board meeting. Says it's about the mystery company. Looks like our time's up, I said, standing. Think about my offer. Bruce is planning something big at the gala, and we both know he doesn't play fair. Back at Russell Corp, I slipped into the board meeting viewing gallery just as Bruce started speaking. From my hidden vantage point, I could see everything while remaining unseen. Ladies and gentlemen, Bruce's voice boomed through the room. We have a crisis. This unknown company isn't just stealing our market share, they're using insider information. My heart raced as he pulled up familiar-looking projections. Not mine, Evangeline's. I propose an immediate acquisition of Stone Technologies, Bruce continued. We eliminate one threat while sending a message to anyone else thinking of challenging us. I texted Evangeline. Bruce took the bait. You know what to do. Seconds later, her reply came. Press release going out now. Let the games begin. On cue, phones around the boardroom started buzzing. Bruce's presentation froze as notifications poured in. Sir, his assistant burst in. Stone Technologies just announced a merger with Pacific Digital. They're out of our reach now. Bruce's face turned red. That's impossible. The numbers showed. The numbers were wrong. John spoke up, his voice steady. Maybe we should focus on our own company's vulnerabilities instead of chasing competitors. I smiled in my hidden spot. John had played his part perfectly, feeding Bruce exactly the information we wanted him to see. Later that evening, I was in my home office when Mark stormed in. Did you know about this? Father's furious. Know about what, honey? I looked up innocently from my gala planning notes. Evangeline Stone. She played us. Father's convinced there's a leak in the company. He ran his hands through his hair. He wants me to start investigating everyone, even family members. That sounds stressful. I stood, straightening his tie. Maybe you should distance yourself from it. Let your father handle his own battles. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. I kissed his cheek. Just don't want you getting caught in the crossfire when things go wrong. His eyes narrowed. When? Don't you mean if? Before I could respond, both our phones chimed. Another anonymous message. The gala guest list includes someone who knows all of Bruce's secrets. Choose your allies carefully. What the hell? Mark stared at his screen. Who's sending these? Probably someone trying to cause trouble. I kept my voice calm while my mind raced. This wasn't part of my plan. You should show your father. No, he said slowly. No, I don't think I will. Something's not right here, Destiny, and I'm starting to wonder if you know more than you're saying. I met his gaze steadily. Do you really want to know the truth, Mark? About your father, about this company? Because once you do, there's no going back. He stepped back, conflict clear on his face. I need to think. After he left, I called Cade. Mark's wavering. We need to move faster. Already done, he replied. Just got word. Bruce's biggest client is pulling out tomorrow. He doesn't know yet. I looked at my calendar, where the gala date was circled in red. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to either secure my victory or lose everything. One more thing, Cade added. Watch out for Evangeline. She might be playing both sides. I hung up, staring at my reflection in the window. The perfect wife was cracking, revealing the CEO beneath. Soon, everyone would see exactly who I really was. And Bruce? Bruce would see it last of all. The Russell Corp lobby erupted in chaos as reporters swarmed the entrance. I stood in the background, watching Bruce try to manage the fallout from losing his biggest client. This is a temporary setback, he announced, his usual confidence cracking slightly. Russell Corp remains stronger than ever. Is it true the client cited ethical concerns? A reporter shouted. No comment, Bruce snapped, retreating toward the elevators. I followed at a distance, slipping into the same elevator just before the doors closed. We were alone. Rough morning? I asked innocently. Bruce's eyes narrowed. Don't get smug, Destiny. This doesn't concern you. Actually, I pulled out my phone, showing him an email. It does. The country club board wants to know if we should postpone the gala, given the circumstances. The gala proceeds as planned. His voice turned to steel. In fact, move it up to next week. I have a special announcement to make. The elevator stopped at his floor. Before exiting, he turned to me. Oh, and Destiny, tell your friend Evangeline that playing both sides is a dangerous game. My blood ran cold. As soon as he left, I texted Marley. He knows something. Meet me at the cafe. 20 minutes later, Marley slid into the booth across from me. It's worse than we thought. Evangeline talked. What? She met with Bruce this morning, offered to help him identify his real competition in exchange for a board seat. I gripped my coffee cup. That backstabbing. Destiny? Mark's voice made me jump. He stood by our table, looking confused. I thought you were planning the gala today. Just taking a quick break, I said smoothly. Want to join us? Actually, yes. He sat down, his expression serious. We need to talk about father. Marley stood. I should go. No, Mark said. Stay. I think you both need to hear this. He pulled out a USB drive. I found something in father's private files about what really happened to my mother's company before she died. My heart raced. Mark, he destroyed her, Mark's voice cracked. She built something amazing, and he crushed it because he couldn't control her. Just like... He looked at me meaningfully. Just like he's trying to do to me. Mark nodded slowly. I saw the prenup, Destiny. The real one, not the version you signed. Father altered it after you signed. It's fraud. Marley gasped. I reached for Mark's hand. How long have you known? Long enough to start my own investigation. He squeezed my hand. I know about your company, Destiny. I've known for months. The cafe seemed to freeze around us. Why didn't you say anything? Because I needed to be sure whose side I was on. He slid the USB drive to me. Now I am. Father's going to announce a major restructuring at the gala. He's planning to seize control of all family assets, including any hidden companies he discovers. He can't do that, Marley protested. He can with these documents. Mark tapped the drive. Unless someone stops him. My phone buzzed. A text from Cade. Bruce called an emergency board meeting. John's been fired. It's starting, I muttered, showing them the message. There's more, Mark said. Father's been moving money offshore. Millions. The company's nearly bankrupt, but he's been hiding it from everyone. I stood abruptly. I need to make some calls. Destiny, Mark caught my arm. Whatever you're planning, I want to help. It's dangerous. I know. He smiled sadly. But it's time someone stood up to him. Mother would have wanted that. Back at my office, I gathered my team via secure video call. John, newly fired but still holding key information. Cade, with his inside access. Marley, my most trusted ally. And now Mark, finally choosing a side. Bruce moved the gala up for a reason, I explained. He's desperate. The company's failing, and he's planning one last power grab. The press is already suspicious, John added. One more scandal could topple everything. Then let's give them one, I said, pulling up documents on my screen. Bruce's offshore accounts, the fraudulent prenup, his history of destroying family businesses. Everything goes public at the gala. He'll fight back, Cade warned. Let him. I smiled grimly. I've got one card left to play, something not even Evangeline knows about. My phone lit up with another anonymous message. Bruce knows more than you think. The gala will be his triumph or his downfall. Choose wisely. I looked at my unlikely team of allies. We have 1 week to end this. Mark squeezed my shoulder. We're ready. But as everyone signed off, I wondered if we really were. Bruce had spent decades building his empire of lies. Taking it down would require perfect timing, absolute trust, and a willingness to risk everything. The gala wouldn't just be an event anymore. It would be a reckoning. 3 days before the gala, I found Bruce waiting in my home office. He sat in my chair, holding a familiar-looking file. Interesting reading material, he said, tapping the folder. For a housewife. I closed the door behind me. We both know I was never just a housewife. No. He stood slowly. You're something far more dangerous. A woman who thinks she can play in a man's world. Is that what you told Mark's mother before you destroyed her company? His face darkened. Careful, Destiny. You're treading on thin ice. Actually, I moved to my desk. I think you're the one who should be careful. I opened my laptop, turning it to face him. Offshore accounts, fraudulent documents, decades of systematic destruction of family businesses. The press would love this story. You're bluffing. Try me. I pulled up more files. Did you really think I wouldn't find out about the real prenup? The one you altered after I signed? A knock interrupted us. Mark entered, freezing when he saw his father. What's going on? Your wife, Bruce spat, is threatening me. No, I corrected. I'm promising you. The gala's in 3 days. Step down quietly, or everything goes public. Bruce laughed, but I caught the fear in his eyes. You'll destroy this family. You already did that, Mark said quietly. I found Mom's letters. Bruce's composure cracked. Your mother was weak. She would have ruined everything I built. Built? I scoffed. You mean stolen, manipulated, destroyed? My phone buzzed. Marley. Evangeline's talking to the press. Turn on the news now. I grabbed the remote, switching on the office TV. Evangeline stood at a podium, looking perfectly poised. And while I cannot name names at this time, I can confirm that major revelations about Russell Corp will be made at the upcoming gala. Bruce's face went pale. You conspired with her? No, I smiled. She conspired with me. Those documents you saw about her company, all part of the plan. You don't have the courage to destroy everything, Bruce challenged. Watch me. I pressed send on an email I'd prepared. I just released proof of your offshore accounts to the board. Consider it a preview of coming attractions. His phone immediately began ringing. He glanced at it, then back at me. This isn't over. Actually, it is. Mark stepped between us. Leave, Father. While you still have a choice. After Bruce stormed out, Mark turned to me. Are you okay? No, I admitted, but I will be. Did you secure the evidence from his office? Everything's here. He patted his briefcase. Cade's got copies too, just in case. My phone rang. John calling. Bruce just called an emergency shareholder meeting for tomorrow morning. He's trying to force a vote before the gala. Let him try, I said. We've got the proxy votes locked up, thanks to you and Cade. After hanging up, I found Mark staring at me. What? He shook his head. I can't believe I never saw it before. How brilliant you are. How much like my mother. Mark, no, let me finish. I was a coward, letting him control everything, letting him do to you what he did to her. He took my hands. Whatever happens next, I'm with you. Another text buzzed through, anonymous again. Bruce has one last card to play. Watch out for the silent partner. Silent partner? Mark frowned. What silent partner? A horrible realization hit me. The gala venue, who owns it? Mark's eyes widened. Father's old friend Patrick. Why? I was already dialing Marley. Get the venue changed. Now. Bruce is going to try to stop the gala entirely. On it, she replied. But Destiny, there's something else. Remember those documents about Bruce's past? There's a name that keeps coming up. Someone who helped him take down your mother-in-law's company. Who? Patrick. I looked at Mark, seeing the same understanding dawn on his face. Bruce hadn't just been building an empire. He'd been building a network of conspirators, each one helping him destroy anyone who threatened his control. The gala's not enough, I realized. We need to expose everyone. It'll cause a scandal that'll rock the whole business community, Mark warned. Good. I started typing rapidly. Let it burn. Let all their lies burn. My phone lit up with another anonymous message. Tomorrow's shareholder meeting is a trap. Bruce knows about the proxy votes. Be ready. I showed Mark the message. Still with me? He kissed me softly. Always. But Destiny. Whatever happens tomorrow. I know. I squeezed his hand. No going back now. The next 24 hours would either see Bruce's empire fall or everything I'd built crumble to dust. And somewhere in the shadows, Patrick waited, Bruce's silent partner in a decades-long game of destruction. The real battle was just beginning. The gala ballroom hummed with tension as I adjusted my midnight blue gown. Reporters lined the entrance, their cameras flashing like lightning before a storm. Bruce stood at the podium, looking confident despite everything. Too confident. Something's wrong, Marley whispered, appearing beside me. Patrick's men are at every exit. Doesn't matter. I checked my phone one last time. Everything's in place. Bruce tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Tonight marks a new chapter for Russell Corp. I caught Mark's eye across the room. He nodded slightly, phone ready. Before we begin, Bruce continued, I'd like to address the recent rumors about our company. They are, of course, completely false. In fact, the lights went out. When they came back on seconds later, the giant screens behind Bruce weren't showing his prepared presentation. Instead, documents began scrolling. Bank statements, emails, contracts. 2 decades of corruption exposed in high definition. What is this? Bruce demanded, but his microphone had gone dead. Mine, however, worked perfectly. The truth, Bruce. My voice rang through the ballroom as I walked toward the stage. Every dirty deal, every destroyed company, every life you've ruined, all of it, documented and verified. Security, Bruce shouted. They're not your security anymore, Cade called out, emerging from the crowd. The board voted an hour ago. You're out, Bruce. Patrick surged forward. This is illegal. You can't. Actually, we can. John stepped up, holding a tablet. Especially with your signed confession. Patrick's face went white. I never signed anything. No, I smiled. But your wife did, after we showed her proof of your affair with her sister. Amazing what people will reveal when they're angry. Reporters were going crazy, cameras flashing, questions flying. Bruce grabbed my arm. "You think you've won?" he hissed. "I still own everything." "The prenup is void," Mark interrupted, joining us on stage. "Because you committed fraud when you altered it after signing. Remember, Father, I found the original." Bruce's grip tightened. "You ungrateful—" "Let her go." Evangeline's voice cut through the chaos. She strode forward, phone recording. "Unless you want assault added to your charges." He released me, looking around wildly as his world crumbled. Board members were already talking to the press. Patrick was being led away by security. The screens kept scrolling, showing proof of every crime, every manipulation. "You don't understand," Bruce pleaded, his composure finally breaking. "I built this company." "No," I corrected him. "You stole this company. Just like you stole Mark's mother's company. Just like you tried to steal my dreams." I turned to address the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce myself properly. I'm Destiny, CEO of Phoenix Technologies, the company that's been outperforming Russell Corp for the past year." The room erupted. Bruce lunged for me, but Mark intercepted him. "It's over, Father," Mark said firmly. "The board has voted. The police are waiting outside. Walk out with dignity or be dragged out. Your choice." Bruce straightened his tie, his mask of control slipping back into place. "You'll regret this. All of you." "No," I said softly. "The only regret here is that it took so long to stop you." As security escorted Bruce out, reporters swarmed the stage. Questions flew from every direction. Did Bruce really destroy his daughter-in-law's company? How long has Phoenix Technologies been operating in secret? "Mr. Russell, did you know about your wife's company?" Mark took my hand, facing the cameras. "My wife built something amazing while fighting against systematic oppression and manipulation. She's not just a CEO, she's a revolution." Marley appeared with champagne. "The board wants to talk to you both. They're voting on new leadership in 10 minutes. I turned to Mark. "Are you ready for this?" "Together," he smiled, "we can rebuild everything. The right way this time." The next hour passed in a blur of interviews, congratulations, and board meetings. By midnight, it was official. Mark and I would co-lead the merged companies, with a board selected for ethics and innovation, rather than loyalty to Bruce. As the crowd thinned, I found a moment alone on the balcony. My phone buzzed one last time. The anonymous number. "Justice served. Your mother-in-law would be proud. M." I smiled, finally understanding who had been helping us all along. Mark's mother wasn't dead as Bruce had claimed. She'd been watching, waiting, helping us expose the truth. "Destiny." Mark joined me outside. "The press wants one more statement." I looked at my husband, seeing him clearly for the first time, not as Bruce's son, but as his mother's child, strong, ethical, ready to right old wrongs. "Let's give them something to remember," I said, taking his hand. Together, we walked back into the light, leaving Bruce's empire of shadows behind us. The game was over. Truth had won. And somewhere out there, a woman who'd lost everything was finally seeing justice served. The morning sun streamed through my office window, my real office, not the hidden one in the guest house. On my desk, newspapers splashed headlines about Bruce's arrest and the corporate merger. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the gala. "Your 9 o'clock is here," my assistant announced through the intercom. "Send her in." The door opened, and I stood, my heart racing. A woman with Mark's eyes entered, elegant, poised, and very much alive. "Margaret," I breathed. "Hello, Destiny." She smiled, the same smile I'd seen in old photos. "I believe we have a lot to discuss." We sat in the comfortable chairs by the window rather than at my desk. Professional barriers seemed pointless now. "The anonymous texts," I said. "That was you." "Among other things." She pulled out a familiar USB drive. "I've spent years gathering evidence against Bruce, waiting for someone strong enough to use it. Why didn't you come forward sooner?" Bruce's threats weren't empty. He had proof of certain questionable decisions I made trying to save my company. If I surfaced, he would have destroyed more than just me. A knock interrupted us. Mark entered, freezing when he saw his mother. "Mum?" The reunion that followed brought tears to my eyes. Mother and son embracing, years of separation dissolving in moments. "I'm so sorry," Margaret whispered to Mark. "I wanted to tell you, but—" "I understand now," he said. "After seeing what Father did to Destiny, I understand everything." My phone buzzed. Marley. "Bruce is requesting a meeting. Says he has one last deal to offer." I showed the message to Margaret and Mark. "Go," Margaret said firmly. "End this properly." The prison visiting room was cold and stark. Bruce sat waiting, orange jumpsuit replacing his designer suits, but his arrogance remained intact. "Destiny," he nodded as I sat. "I see Margaret's resurfaced." "Your last play failed, Bruce. What do you want?" "To make a deal. I have other accounts, other resources. Help reduce my sentence, and half of it is yours." I laughed. "You still don't get it, do you? This was never about money." "Then what?" He leaned forward. "Revenge? Power? Don't pretend you're better than me." "No, Bruce. This was about justice. For Margaret, for every woman you've tried to control, for every dream you've crushed." "Dreams?" He scoffed. "I built an empire. And now you'll watch from in here as we transform it into something better." I stood. "Goodbye, Bruce." "Wait!" His composure cracked. "Please, Mark's all I have left. You lost Mark the moment you tried to make him choose between his mother's memory and your control." I turned back at the door. "By the way, I'm pregnant. Your grandchild will never know you existed." Back at the office, I found Cade waiting with Marley and John. "Board approved the new structure," Cade reported. "You and Mark as co-CEOs, Margaret heading the charitable foundation." "And Evangeline?" I asked. "Agreed to the merger terms. She's taking Asia operations." My office door opened again. Patrick's wife entered, holding more documents. "Found these in his private safe," she said. "Thought you might want them for the prosecution." "Thank you, Sandra." I took the files. "The Foundation's legal team will handle your divorce pro bono." She smiled tearfully. "Thank you for helping me find my courage." As the day wound down, I found myself back in my office with Mark and Margaret. "The press wants interviews," Mark said. "Stories of redemption, women in business, corporate reform." "Let them wait," Margaret replied. "Family comes first. Isn't that right, Destiny?" I touched my stomach, still flat, but holding our future. "Yes, family first, but on our terms this time." "Speaking of terms," Mark pulled out an envelope. "I had our lawyers draw something up." Inside was a new contract, not a prenup, but a partnership agreement. Equal shares, equal power, equal respect. "No more secrets," Mark said. "No more hidden agendas." "No more hiding," I agreed, signing the document. Margaret took it next, signing as witness. "Now, about my grandchild." We laughed, the sound echoing through an office that had seen too many dark deals and not enough joy. My phone buzzed one last time. Marley had sent a photo of Bruce's empty office being transformed into a women's mentorship center. "Ready to build something new?" Mark asked, taking my hand. I looked at my family. Not the one I'd married into, but the one we'd forged through truth and trust. Margaret, who'd lost everything but gained it back through patience and courage. Mark, who'd chosen love over power. Our unborn child, who would inherit a legacy of strength rather than manipulation. "Yes," I said, "let's build something extraordinary." Together, we walked toward the future, not as Russell Corp's heirs, but as architects of change. Bruce's empire had fallen, but from its ashes, we would rise stronger, wiser, and unafraid. The game was over. Life was just beginning.
My name is Alice. You know how life throws you curveballs when you least expect it? Well, mine came hurling at me at 39, right in the middle of what I thought was my settled, predictable life. After my first marriage tanked, I swore off the whole idea. No more ties, I'd tell myself, burying my days in the scent of roses and lilies at my little flower shop. That was, until David walked in. It was a regular Tuesday, or so I thought, me behind the counter, sorting through a new shipment of carnations, when he came in. First thing I noticed? He looked as out of place in a flower shop as a cat in a swimming pool. Tall, with hands that clearly were more used to hard hats than delicate petals, he stood by the entrance, scanning the place like he was planning a construction project rather than picking out flowers. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying not to sound as amused as I felt. "Yeah," he started, scratching the back of his head. "I need a bouquet. For my mom. It's her birthday." His straightforwardness was refreshing, if not a bit blunt. I guided him through some choices, explaining what each flower symbolized, but he waved it off. "Look, I don't need the fancy stuff. Just something that says, 'Happy birthday, Mom,' without making my wallet cry." I chuckled, picking out a few blooms that wouldn't break the bank. "Here, how about this?" He eyed the bouquet, then nodded. "That'll do. How much?" As I rang him up, he glanced around the shop, his gaze landing on a picture of me at a flower show. "You do all this yourself?" "Yeah," I said, wrapping up his bouquet. "It's my little kingdom of chaos." He laughed, a deep, genuine sound that made me look up. "I like that. A kingdom of chaos. Fits the bill for a flower shop." The transaction was smooth, and as he handed over the cash, he paused. "Hey, you got plans Friday night?" I raised an eyebrow, not sure if I heard him right. "Excuse me?" "For dinner. I mean, if you're free. I owe you one for helping me out." It took me a second. "You're asking me out?" "Yeah," he said, the corner of his mouth tilting up. "I guess I am." I should have said no. I had a rule about dating customers, especially ones that buy bouquets for their moms. But something about his straightforwardness, that glint in his eye, made me throw caution to the wind. "Sure," I found myself saying. "Why not?" "Great," he beamed. "I'll pick you up at 8? The rest of the day passed in a blur, his visit replaying in my mind. I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into. After closing up, I called my best friend, Jessie. "You did what?" Jessie's voice blasted through the phone. "I said yes to a date. With a customer," I repeated, bracing for the lecture. "Girl, have you lost your mind? What about your no dating rule?" I sighed, leaning against the counter. I know. But there's something about him. He's different." "Different, huh?" Jessie chuckled. "Well, don't come crying to me when he turns out to be a frog instead of a prince." I laughed, shaking my head. "Thanks for the vote of confidence." That simple dinner date? It morphed into something neither of us expected. What started as casual outings became late-night talks, and those talks, they turned into an affair that was anything but casual. David was like a hurricane, sweeping into my life, turning everything upside down in the best way possible. Before I knew it, I was in love. Deeply. Madly. The kind of love I'd convinced myself didn't exist for me anymore. One night, sprawled on the couch after another one of our movie marathons, David looked at me, his eyes more serious than I'd ever seen. "Marry me," he said, no preamble, no ring, just raw honesty in his voice. I laughed, thinking it was a joke. But the look in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. "You're serious?" As a heart attack, he shot back, a grin breaking through. "I'm crazy about you. Let's do this." For real. It was nuts. Insane. We hadn't even been together that long, but when something feels right, you just know. And with David, everything felt right. So, I said yes. Just like that, I was engaged, stepping into a future I'd never dared to dream of. Who would have thought that a year after saying "I do," I'd be staring at a pregnancy test, 2 pink lines glaring back at me? Not me, that's for sure. After everything with my first marriage, kids were the last thing on my mind. Yet, there I was, about to start a whole new chapter with David, one that neither of us had planned for. "Babe, you in there?" David's voice came through the bathroom door, laced with a mix of concern and curiosity. "Yeah, just give me a minute," I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. When I finally stepped out, pregnancy test in hand, David knew. His eyes widened, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was deafening. "So, what's the verdict?" he asked, his voice a notch higher than usual. I held up the test, watching as his face transitioned from shock to something I couldn't quite place. Was it fear, excitement, or a mix of both? "We're gonna have a baby," I said, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. David stepped forward, wrapping me in a hug so tight it almost hurt. "Wow," he whispered. "Just, wow. We're gonna be parents." "Scared?" I asked, burying my face in his chest. "Terrified," he admitted. "But hey, we're in this together, right?" "Right," I agreed, though the fluttering in my stomach suggested my body wasn't as convinced. The next few weeks were a blur of doctor's appointments, morning sickness, and a never-ending carousel of emotions. With David often away on business trips, I found myself navigating this new reality solo. It wasn't easy, but the thought of the little life growing inside me kept me going. One evening, after a particularly rough day of nausea, I was sprawled on the couch when David called. "Hey, love, how's my favorite girl and our little bean?" he asked, his voice a balm to my frazzled nerves. "Your little bean has had me hugging the toilet all day," I grumbled, though a smile crept onto my lips at his enthusiasm. "Ah, the joys of pregnancy," he chuckled. "Listen, I was thinking, why don't you take it easy, quit the shop for a while? We've got savings, and this should be a time for you to relax, focus on the baby." I hesitated. My flower shop was my sanctuary, the one place where I felt in control. But as another wave of nausea hit, I realized David was right. "Maybe you're onto something," I conceded. "I'll think about it." "Good. And hey, I'll be home this weekend. We can talk more about it then." Hanging up, I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. Quitting my job meant embracing this new role fully, but it also meant letting go of a part of myself. Was I ready for that? David's return that weekend brought a sense of calm to the chaos. We spent hours discussing our future, making plans, and dreaming up names for our baby. It was during one of these conversations, curled up in bed, that I made up my mind. "I think I'm gonna do it," I said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Do what?" David mumbled, half asleep. "Quit the shop. For now, at least. Focus on being a mom." David propped himself up on one elbow, his eyes searching mine. "You sure? You love that place." "I do, but I love our family more. And who knows, maybe down the line, I can start something new. A flower shop that's also a nursery, maybe?" David laughed, pulling me closer. "You, my love, are brilliant. We'll figure it out. Together." And just like that, a new chapter began. Not just for me, but for us. It was daunting, sure, but with David by my side, I felt like we could tackle anything. Even the unpredictability of parenthood. The thing about dreams is, sometimes they're not yours, they're someone else's that just happen to bulldoze into your life. That's what happened with David's folks, specifically his mom, Linda. One lazy Sunday, Linda was over, again, gushing about the house. "Oh, darling, this place is just divine. So spacious, so elegant. Imagine the family gatherings we could have. Yeah, it's great for the two of us, and the baby, soon," I added, trying to be polite but firm. I wasn't about to let her interior decorating fantasies run wild in my home. "Oh, but think about it. With me and Greg here, you'd have all the help you'd need with the baby." Linda was like a steamroller, paving over any hint of resistance with well-meaning but suffocating enthusiasm. Greg, David's dad, was a quieter sort. He'd usually just nod along to whatever Linda was saying, adding a thoughtful here and there. But even he seemed a bit more invested this time. It's a big house, dear. Lots of room for family. I glanced at David, hoping for some backup, but he was conveniently engrossed in something on his phone. Coward. Look, Linda, Greg, I appreciate the offer, really. I began, mustering all the patience I had. But David and I are looking forward to figuring this out on our own. We need our space, you know? Linda's face fell slightly, but she recovered quickly, her smile a bit too tight. Of course, darling, we understand. Just remember, we're here if you need us. The conversation shifted, thankfully, but the weight of it lingered like a bad smell. David caught me in the kitchen later, away from the prying ears. Hey, I know my mom can be a bit much, he started, looking sheepish. But you handled that well. A bit much? I scoffed, leaning against the counter. She's planning to move in, David. That's not a bit. That's a whole lot of much. David sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know. I'll talk to them, okay? Just give me some time. Time, I muttered. Sure. Because what we have plenty of right now is time and space to accommodate everyone else's dreams. David winced. I get it. I do. And I'm on your side, babe. Team us, remember? Team us seems to be playing a man down lately, I said, not quite ready to let him off the hook yet. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me close. I'm here. And I promise, no unwelcomed guests in our future. Just us and the little one. I wanted to believe him, really. But the thing about unwelcome dreams is they have a way of showing up, invitation or not. And Linda, with her big dreams and steamroller tactics, wasn't the type to give up easily. The day Linda convinced me to go shopping with her was the day I realized patience was a virtue I desperately needed more of. It'll be fun, she had exclaimed, dragging me to what she called a little retail therapy. I should have known better. We hit the first store, and everything was fine until we got to the counter. Linda suddenly patted her purse and coat with a look of faux surprise. Oh dear, I seem to have left my wallet. Can you cover this, darling? I'll pay you back as soon as we get home. I was taken aback, but nodded, sliding my card across the counter. Sure, no problem. But then it happened again. And again. By the fourth store, my patience was wearing thinner than the soles of my shoes. We were in some fancy boutique, Linda holding up a dress that cost more than my monthly mortgage. Isn't this just darling? She gushed, not waiting for my response before heading to the checkout. As she once again performed her now familiar wallet pat-down, I felt something snap inside me. Linda, this has got to stop. I can't keep buying stuff for you. She looked at me, feigning confusion. But dear, it's no bother for you, is it? You've got plenty. A little shopping spree won't hurt. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my cool. It's not about the money, Linda. It's the principle. You keep forgetting your wallet. Doesn't seem quite fair, does it? Her face turned a shade I had only seen on overripe tomatoes. Fair? I thought we were family. Family helps each other out. Helping is one thing. This is taking advantage, I retorted, my voice firmer than I intended. She scoffed, placing the dress back on the rack with more force than necessary. Fine. I didn't realize I was such a burden. As we left the store, the silence between us was as heavy as the bags in my hands. The drive home was tense, and by the time we pulled up to the house, I was mentally drafting an apology. But before I could say anything, Linda turned to me, her voice softer. Look, I'm sorry. I just got carried away. You know how it is. I nodded, though I really didn't. It's okay, Linda. Let's just try to communicate better, okay? No more surprises at the checkout. That shopping trip with Linda was an eye-opener, not just about her, but about the kind of boundaries I needed to set. So, when she came knocking again, all smiles and invitations to hit up some sale at a fancy clothing store, I was ready with my answer. Thanks, but no thanks, Linda. I'm not really up for shopping, I said, hoping she'd catch the hint and leave it at that. But Linda, ever persistent, didn't skip a beat. Oh, come on. That's fine, dear. Just lend me your card, then. I saw this darling dress on sale, and it would be a shame to miss it. I stared at her, sure I'd misheard. My card? You want to use my credit card? Well, yes, Linda said, as if it was the most natural request in the world. You've got plenty, and we're family, aren't we? The audacity floored me. Linda, I'm not going to fund your shopping sprees. That's not how I use my money. Her face turned a shade I'd never seen on her before, caught between embarrassment and anger. Without another word, she huffed out of the house. A week passed with no word from Linda, which suited me just fine. Then, out of the blue, she showed up with Greg in tow, both of them wearing their best concerned in-laws faces. We've been thinking about you, dear. With the baby coming and all, you'll need all the help you can get, Greg started, his voice gentle. And we'd be more than happy to move in, help out with the little one, Linda added, as if the previous week hadn't happened. I couldn't believe we were back to this conversation again. Thanks, but no. David and I have got it covered. We don't need any extra help. David, who'd been quiet up to this point, finally chimed in. Mom, Dad, we appreciate it, but we're not looking to change our living situation. Please, let's not bring this up again. Their faces fell, a mix of surprise and disappointment, but they didn't push further. Not then, anyway. Linda and Greg left with a lot less cheer than they'd arrived with, and I was left wondering how many more rounds we'd have to go through before they finally got the message. When the time came to have our baby, everything that could go wrong, did. The doctors said our baby had serious health issues right from the start. Heart pounding, I begged David to come home, but work had him tied up across the country. Instead of him, I got Linda at the hospital, filling the room with her dramatics and blame. If only you'd had kids sooner, she kept saying, as if I needed that on top of everything else. Giving birth was the hardest thing I've ever done, especially knowing what was coming. When our baby didn't make it, something inside me broke. I've been stuck in that moment ever since, lost in a fog of grief. David finally got back and tried his best to pull me through, holding me while I cried, sitting with me in silence when I couldn't find the words. But Linda, she just couldn't grasp the depth of our loss. She actually suggested shopping to get over it, as if a new pair of shoes could fill the hole in my heart. We had it out then, her telling me I was being dramatic, and me too tired of her insensitivity to hold back any punches. Our home, filled with the echoes of a joy that never came to be, became a prison. The walls, the empty nursery, every corner a reminder of what we'd lost. I can't stay here, I whispered one night, the admission a crack in the dam I'd built around my heart. David held me, his own tears mingling with mine. Then we'll leave, he said, the decision made in the face of our shared agony. We'll start anew, somewhere else. For us, and for the memory of our child. We found a smaller place, far from Linda's reach and the memories that haunted us. The move couldn't come fast enough for me. I was counting down the days, eager for a fresh start away from the pitying looks and the silence that echoed too loudly in the rooms where our baby should have been. The idea of moving, of leaving it all behind, was the first thing in a long time that felt like hope. Not the bright, shining kind, but the gritty, determined sort that gets you out of bed in the morning when nothing else will. I was ready to say goodbye to the house, to Linda's interference, and to the shadow of grief that had settled over my life. I was ready to try and find some kind of peace, or at least a place where the memories weren't so loud. The days leading up to the move were a blur of boxes and packing tape. David had to jet off for what was supposed to be a quick trip, another project that couldn't wait. I was elbow deep in sorting through our lives when my phone rang. The voice on the other end was supposed to tell me David's flight got delayed or something trivial like that. Instead, it dropped my world out from under me. Accident at the site. David didn't make it. I was frozen, the phone slipping from my hand. We'd just lost our baby, and now David? It felt like some cruel joke, a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I was still in that daze when Linda showed up, her timing impeccable as ever. But instead of the shared grief I expected, her first words knocked the breath from me. "Well, we'll have to move in with you now." It's what David would have wanted. I stared at her, dumbfounded. Was she serious? Her eyes roamed the room, already planning, already imposing her presence in a home that was about to not be mine anymore. "How can you even think about that now?" I managed, my voice hollow. "David is gone, Linda. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" She waved off my words, her mind clearly set. "We need to think practically. You can't stay here all alone." It's settled then. I couldn't handle it. Without another word, I turned and walked away, the sound of her voice fading as I shut the door to my room. Linda didn't know the house was already sold, that in a month, none of this would be mine anymore. Not that it mattered. With David gone, it didn't feel like mine anyway. The day finally came to close one chapter and start another. After signing the papers and sealing the deal, I went back to the old place to gather the last of my things. The doorbell rang just as I was wrapping up. Expecting maybe the new owners or a late mover, I opened the door, only to find a truck loaded with my in-laws' stuff. My heart sank. Not now, not today. Linda was all smiles, announcing they were moving in to take care of me, as if I hadn't made it clear that I needed space, not more chains. I was about to respond when she just started directing the movers to bring stuff in, as if she owned the place. Just then, the actual new owners pulled up, looking confused and a bit annoyed at the scene. They asked who these people were, and I had to explain. They're nobody, really. Just some folks who got the wrong address. The moment Linda realized the house had been sold, she exploded, accusing me of stealing her dream, of ruining everything. It was all about her, her dreams, her needs. Not once did she consider my feelings, my loss, or what I wanted for my future. Her husband, ever the quiet one, then had the audacity to suggest they move in with me to my new place. As if after everything, that was somehow going to be okay. I was beyond words. "Look, I don't know what fantasy world you're living in, but you're not part of my life anymore. Not like this. You need to leave." I turned to the new owners, my face burning with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry. Let me help you get them off your property." The suggestion of calling the police was enough to get them moving. They left, taking their truck of broken dreams with them. Settling into my new place was like stepping into a fresh start, a chance to build something from the ground up, just for me and, as it turned out, for someone else too. The house felt empty at first, like it was waiting to be filled with life and laughter again. And life, unpredictable as ever, had a plan. The insurance money came through sooner than expected, a bittersweet reminder of everything lost. But it gave me the means to start anew, to do something meaningful. That's when I decided to adopt. There was a little one, abandoned, needing a home as much as I needed to fill mine. Bringing that child into my life, into my home, changed everything. It felt right, like this was meant to be my path all along. As for Linda and her husband, last I heard, they blew through their money on foolishness and ended up in some cramped apartment. Can't say I'm surprised. They were always more about the show than the substance. Serves them right, I muttered to myself when Jessie, my best friend, brought me the gossip. But I didn't dwell on it. They made their choices, and I made mine. Jessie, ever the rock, dropped by one day, her usual whirlwind self. "Look at you," she said, eyeing the chaos of toys and art supplies that now decorated my living room. "Who would have thought, huh?" I smiled, watching my child play. "Not me, that's for sure, but I wouldn't change a thing. David would be over the moon," she added softly, leaning on the counter. "Yeah," I sighed, my heart heavy with missing him but filled with love for the life we were building. "He would be." Our life moved on, filled with the small adventures and challenges of raising a child. My heart, once broken, began to heal, wrapping itself around my new purpose. This wasn't the life I had planned, but it was the life I was meant to have. And through all the ups and downs, I felt David's love, a guiding light through the darkness. Alright, let's dive deep into my world a bit more. Name's Nellie, and if you haven't guessed it yet, I'm all about that precision life. Crunching numbers by day at this beast of a trading company, and by night, I'm basically the queen of organization. My life's motto? A place for everything, and everything in its place. It's not just about being neat, it's about control, knowing where every penny of my hard-earned cash is going. My pals, bless them, they find my obsession a tad amusing. Nellie, you're the only person I know who gets excited over a new filing system. They'd chuckle, shaking their heads in disbelief. But, hey, I swear this stuff has saved my skin more times than I can count. So, there I was, at this shindig thrown by a couple of friends from work. Not my usual scene, I'm more about cozy nights in with a strong cup of coffee and spreadsheets for company. But there he was, Jake, this slightly older guy with an easy smile, leaning casually against the bar. He had this manager vibe going on at a local car parts store. Not exactly Mr. Wall Street, but the man had a certain something. We got to talking, him with his beer, me with my meticulously chosen glass of wine. So, you're into economics, huh? That's like predicting the future with numbers? He asked, his voice tinged with genuine curiosity. I laughed, a bit louder than I intended. Something like that. It's more about making sense of the chaos, finding patterns where others see mess. He nodded, taking a sip. I get that. I'm all about order myself. Ever tried organizing a storeroom full of car parts without losing your mind? Can't say I have, I admitted. But it sounds like a puzzle. A frustrating one, Jake agreed. But satisfying when everything fits just right. Our conversation rolled on, smooth and easy. It was a breath of fresh air, talking to someone who didn't just nod along, but actually got it. We shared stories about our work, the challenges of keeping things in line, and the odd satisfaction of a well-organized spreadsheet. Weeks turned into months, and our casual meetups became something more. Jake had this straightforward way of cutting through the BS that I really admired. He didn't dress things up or play games, he was just real. One chilly evening, after a dinner where we'd both complained about our day, Jake turned to me, his expression serious. Nellie, I've been thinking. I raised an eyebrow. About? Us, he said simply. I know I'm not the kind of guy who goes for grand gestures, but I'm pretty sure I've hit the jackpot with you. I could feel my heart racing, the anticipation building. And I'm thinking, why wait? Nellie, will you marry me? He fumbled slightly as he pulled out a small, velvet box, revealing a ring that was elegant in its simplicity. It was so Jake, no fluff, no extravagant speeches. Just a straight-up proposal. And it was perfect. Yes, Jake. 1,000,000 times, yes. Planning a wedding, you'd think it's all about lovey-dovey stuff, picking flowers, and tasting cakes. Well, add a bit of family drama to the mix, and you've got a whole different ball game. Me and Jake, we decided to keep it simple, just close friends and family. Little did I know, the definition of simple was about to get a reality check. Jake's sister, Emily, she's got these 4 kids, right? Little tornadoes, I swear. The moment we announced our wedding date, I could see the mischief in their eyes. Jake, bless him, he's all laid back. Kids will be kids, Nellie. They'll be fine. Famous last words. As D-Day approached, I found myself knee-deep in seating charts and menu choices. One evening, Jake and I were finalizing the guest list. Are we sure about inviting the whole crew? I joked, eyeing the names of Emily's kids. Feels like we're summoning a hurricane. Jake chuckled, wrapping an arm around me. They're not that bad. Plus, Em needs a break. It'll be fine. Fine, I echoed, not entirely convinced. but love's about compromises, right? I figured, how bad could it be? Cut to the wedding day. The venue looked like something out of a dream, all decked out and ready. That is, until the mini hurricanes made their grand entrance. Running around like they owned the place, I watched as my carefully planned day teetered on the edge of chaos. Mid-ceremony, one of them knocked over a vase. Water everywhere. I caught Jake's eye, and for a second, he looked as panicked as I felt. But then, he just grinned and shrugged. That man, I tell you, unflappable. At the reception, Emily was off mingling, her kids running wild. Jake and I were trying to make rounds, thanking guests, when one of the little darlings decided to showcase his food fighting skills. I felt something splat against my back, cake, icing, and all. I spun around, ready to blow a fuse, when Jake caught my hand. Hey, it's just cake. Let's not sweat the small stuff today. Small stuff? Jake, they're turning our wedding into a circus, I hissed, trying to keep my voice down. He leaned in, a smirk playing on his lips. Makes for a memorable day, doesn't it? Memorable was one word for it. By the end of the night, I was exhausted, covered in various food stains, and sporting a headache from the constant din. But as we made our escape, Jake's hand in mine, I couldn't help but laugh. Your family's nuts, I told him, shaking my head. Yep, but now they're your nuts too, he teased, pulling me closer. Great. Just what I always wanted, I replied, rolling my eyes, but leaning into his embrace. After the wedding whirlwind, me and Jake settled into our new life together. It felt like playing house at first, both of us tiptoeing around each other's routines, trying to mesh our worlds without stepping on toes. We were living in this cozy, rented apartment downtown, close enough to both our jobs that the morning commute was a breeze. But it wasn't long before the newlywed bliss phase started to wear thin, and the real work of building a life together began. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I found Jake sprawled on the couch, surrounded by a mountain of real estate listings. What's all this? I asked, dropping my keys on the counter. Jake sat up, a spark in his eyes. I was thinking, why not take the leap? Let's buy a place of our own. The idea of buying a house hadn't really crossed my mind yet. Are we ready for that? That's a big step. He shrugged. We're not getting any younger. Plus, think about it, no more rent, a place we can actually call ours. Come on, what do you say? I couldn't deny the appeal. The thought of having our own space, decorating it just the way we wanted, hosting dinner parties, and maybe, just maybe, starting a family, filled me with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Okay, let's do it, I said, the decision feeling right despite the butterflies in my stomach. Fast forward through the headache of house hunting, and we're standing in front of this quaint place that's now ours. It's got a backyard that's begging for a barbecue and more rooms than we know what to do with. I took the lead on kitting out our new digs, making sure everything was just perfect. Jake was all for it, but he couldn't help poking fun at me for keeping every receipt for the furniture and appliances. What's this, the Nellie Museum Archive? He'd chuckle, flipping through my meticulously organized folder. Hey, you never know when you might need to return something, I'd retort, not letting on how much I loved that everything in our home was picked out by me, with my own cash. It was more than just being responsible, it was a piece of me in every choice, every purchase. It felt good, building something together, making decisions. But beneath the surface, there was a tension brewing, a silent elephant in the room that neither of us wanted to address. I couldn't get pregnant. Months turned into a year, and every negative test felt like a tiny heartbreak. I tried to keep a brave face, focusing on our home, my work, anything but the growing fear that maybe motherhood wasn't in the cards for me. One night, lying in bed, Jake broke the silence. We don't have to keep trying, you know. If it's too much. I cut him off. No, I want to keep trying. It's hard. He pulled me closer, kissing the top of my head. We'll figure it out, okay? Whatever happens, we're in this together. His words were a balm, but they couldn't quite chase away the shadow that had settled over us. The joy of our new home was tinged with the sadness of what was missing. Despite the struggles, life went on. We hosted barbecues, celebrated holidays, and filled our home with laughter and love. But the guest room that we'd earmarked as a nursery remained empty, a silent reminder of the one thing we couldn't seem to achieve. The whole ordeal with Emily and her brood turning our wedding into a zoo was getting out of hand. She'd rock up from the next town over, dumping her chaos at our doorstep with a "Hey, just passing through." Like clockwork, her arrival spelled the end of any peace and quiet. The kids, bless their hearts, were a handful, to put it mildly. Running around like they'd just been let out of a cage, screaming, fighting, you name it. And Emily? She'd just plant herself on our couch, launching into the latest saga with her husband like she was the star of some daytime drama. One of those Saturdays, she's mid-rant about her husband's new prank or something, and her kids are practically swinging from the light fixtures. I'm there, trying to keep my cool, but inside, I'm a second away from losing it. Emily, can you maybe, I don't know, get them to tone it down a bit? I ask, my voice tight with that edge of I'm trying not to scream here. She barely glances up, waving a hand dismissively. Oh, they're just being kids. Let them be. Let them be. Sure, it being means turning my home into a circus. It was later, during dinner, when the real kicker came. One of the kids decided to turn his spaghetti into a projectile, launching it across the table. I snapped. That's enough. We do not throw food in this house. Emily's face turned stormy, and she hit me with, maybe if you had kids of your own, you'd understand. That stung. More than she knew. Jake's there, but he's doing his best impression of Switzerland, staying neutral. Or maybe more accurately, siding with his sister by not siding with anyone. It felt like a betrayal, him not stepping in, not backing me up. Later, I corner Emily in the kitchen, trying to keep my voice level. You know that was out of line, right? What you said earlier. She's unapologetic, all but rolling her eyes. Oh, please. You're overreacting. It's just kids being kids. I'm fuming, but there's no getting through to her. And Jake? He's no help, always with the she's going through a tough time excuse. Like that's a free pass to disrespect our home. It got to the point where every ring of the doorbell had me tensing up, wondering if it was another surprise invasion. I loved Jake, but his inability to stand up to his sister, to see how this was tearing at the fabric of our quiet life, was driving a wedge between us. One evening, after yet another chaotic visit, I cornered Jake. We need to talk. This can't go on. He sighs, running a hand through his hair. She's family, Nellie. What do you want me to do? Stand up for me, for us. I shoot back, my frustration boiling over. Your sister's behavior, and those kids. It's too much. He looks torn, but I can tell he's struggling to see it from my side. I'll talk to her. He finally mutters, but the promise feels hollow. So, there I was, on what was supposed to be a quiet weekend, transformed into a live-in chef and babysitter for Emily's brood. She breezed out the door, off to shop, leaving a tornado of demands in her wake. I want spaghetti, one shouted. No, make pizza, another demanded. The chaos was enough to make my head spin, and that was before the TV volume cranked to a level that could probably be heard in the next city over. Just as I was about to lose my last shred of sanity to the symphony of kitchen timers and cartoon explosions, an eerie silence fell over the house. Anyone who says silence is golden has never had to deal with kids. That kind of quiet? It's the calm before the storm. Dread settled in the pit of my stomach as I stepped out of the kitchen, half expecting to find the living room turned into a war zone. What I saw instead stopped me dead in my tracks. There, in the midst of the living room, stood Jake's nephews, covered in paint, with my grandmother's painting, the one she'd passed down to me, the one thing I'd cherished above almost everything else, ruined. Streaks of paint obliterated the once beautiful image, turning it into a mockery of its former glory. The anger that surged through me was like nothing I'd ever felt. "What have you done?" My voice was sharp, a whip crack in the silent room. The kids, sensing the shift, scattered, leaving me alone with the wreckage of my heritage. The fight that ensued when Jake and Emily got back was apocalyptic. "You were supposed to watch them." Emily had the gall to accuse, her words fanning the flames of my rage. "These aren't my kids, Emily. It's not my job to watch them every second," I shot back, my voice hoarse with anger. Jake, ever the peacekeeper, tried to intervene, but there was no stopping this. "Nellie, they're just kids. We'll fix the painting." He tried to reassure me, but the damage was done, both to the painting and to us. "That's not the point, Jake. That painting meant the world to me. It's about respect, about understanding. Something your sister clearly lacks." I was beyond reasoning, the betrayal cutting deep. The argument spiraled, words like knives, leaving wounds too deep to see. Jake sided with Emily, a choice that stung more than I cared to admit. After that, silence. Not the tense quiet before a storm, but the cold, empty silence that fills a room when there's nothing left to say. Ever since the whole painting incident, things between Jake and me were tense, like a string pulled too tight, ready to snap. That breakfast, though, that's when it all came crashing down. Jake, in his infinite wisdom, decided over coffee and toast that it was the perfect time to drop a bomb on me. So, Emily split up with her husband. She's gonna stay here, with the kids. Just for a few months. I almost choked on my coffee. "Wait, what? Here? Jake, do you even remember what happened last time? This house can't survive that kind of storm." He sighed, the kind of sigh that said he was bracing for an argument he thought he'd win. "It's family, Nellie. We can't turn them away. Besides, you're great with the kids." I snorted. "Great with them? I'm not running a daycare, Jake. I have a job, remember? The one that pays for half of everything in this house?" He wasn't budging, though. "She's coming over tomorrow. We'll figure it out." Figure it out, right? Because we'd done such a stellar job of that so far. I couldn't let it go. "What about renting them a place? I'll pay for the first month. They'll have their space, we'll have ours. Everyone's happy." But Jake shook his head, stubborn as ever. "It's better if they're here. You know, family support and all that." Support. That's what he called this impending chaos. The argument spiraled from there, words sharp and heated. "You can't decide this without me, Jake. This is our home, not a halfway house for every relative in crisis." He shot back, just as angry. "They're my family, Nellie. Should I just turn my back on them?" "No, but there's a limit. There has to be." The conversation ended with slammed doors and silent treatments. The next day, when I needed to get to work, my car keys were mysteriously missing. A call to Jake revealed the final betrayal. "Emily needs the car more than you do," he said, like he was doing me a favor. That was it. The last straw on a back broken by compromise and sacrifice. While Jake was off playing savior, I took action. I called the movers, directing them to every piece of furniture my paycheck had ever touched. The living room set, the dining table, even the damn curtains. By the afternoon, the house was empty, a shell of the home it once was. I drove to my mom's, the back of my car filled with the last bits and pieces of my old life. She was waiting, as she always did, with open arms and a pot of coffee on. "Jake's going to flip," was all I could say as I walked in, the weight of my decisions heavy on my shoulders. Mom just nodded, pouring me a cup. "Sometimes, you have to stand up for yourself, honey. No matter how hard it is." As I sat there, sipping coffee in the quiet of my mom's kitchen, I couldn't help but smile, imagining Jake's face when he walked into our empty house. It wasn't spite that warmed me, but a flicker of hope, a sense of freedom. I had drawn a line, finally, after months of being erased and redrawn by everyone but me. In a few hours, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree with calls from Jake. I didn't pick up. Couldn't, really. I just watched the count of missed calls climb, each one a reminder of the storm I knew was brewing. By evening, the storm broke right on my mom's doorstep. Jake showed up, mad as a hornet, ready to have it out then and there. "You've lost your mind, Nellie. Calling you a thief would be putting it mildly," he roared the moment I opened the door, stepping into the quiet of my mom's living room like a whirlwind of fury. I kept my cool, even as my hands itched to wring his neck for bringing all this drama to my mom's house. "Thief? Really, Jake? Let's get this straight. You took the car, our car, saying you bought it, so it was yours to give away." "Well, I took back what I paid for. Fair's fair." His face went through about a dozen shades of red and purple as I laid out the receipts on the coffee table, proof of every penny I'd spent on our home. This isn't how you solve problems, Nellie." "Oh, and letting your sister and her circus take over our lives was a solution?" I shot back, my patience worn to a nub. He was pacing now, like a caged animal. "Where are they supposed to sleep, huh? You've left my sister and her kids without beds and blankets." I shrugged, all out of sympathy. "Sounds like a you problem now, Jake." That's when he played his last card, the threat of divorce hanging between us like a guillotine. "I'll file for divorce. I swear, Nellie, I will." I didn't blink, didn't flinch. Instead, I reached into the folder I'd kept close all day and pulled out the divorce papers. "Beat you to it. Here. I've wanted out for a while now. Sign them, and you're free to play the hero all you want." The silence that followed was deafening. He took the papers, scanning them like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Then, without a word, he signed them. Just like that, it was done. He left as quickly as he'd come, leaving a wake of stunned silence behind him. After the dust settled from the whole divorce saga, I found myself in this weird limbo, caught between relief and uncertainty. Jake and I sold the house, split the money down the middle. Through the grapevine, because small towns have nothing if not an efficient rumor mill, I heard about Jake's new setup. Him, Emily, and her rowdy crew crammed into a small apartment. The thought of it brought a mix of emotions. There was a petty part of me that wanted to revel in the schadenfreude, but mostly, I just felt sorry for him. Jake was working himself to the bone, juggling 2 jobs, to keep them all afloat. And Emily? Still not lifting a finger, still the queen of her own little drama. I ran into Lisa, one of our mutual friends, at the grocery store. "Hey, Nellie, you heard about Jake's new place?" she asked, all casual, like she wasn't dropping the latest town gossip. I shrugged, tossing a box of cereal into my cart. "Heard something about it. Sounds cozy." Lisa laughed, shaking her head. "Cozy's one word for it. Heard they're at each other's throats half the time. Emily's not making things easy." I sighed, not sure what to feel. "Well, he made his bed. Now he's gotta lie in it." Lisa patted my arm, a silent show of support. "You're better off, you know. You seem lighter, somehow." Lighter. That was exactly it. The weight of constant compromise, of living in a perpetual state of tension, had lifted. I was starting over, and the freedom of it was exhilarating. My new apartment wasn't much, just a small, bright space that was all mine. Decorating it felt therapeutic, a way to mark the beginning of this new chapter. My mom helped, her presence a comforting constant in the whirlwind of change. "You need anything else, honey?" she asked one afternoon, surveying my half-unpacked living room. I looked around, taking in the boxes, the bare walls waiting to be filled with new memories. "No, I think I'm good. Thanks, Mom." I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. One evening, as I stood back to admire a particularly vibrant canvas, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. It was from Jake. "Hope you're doing well, Nellie. I'm sorry for everything." I stared at the screen for a long time, the words blurring before my eyes. The apology was unexpected, a small olive branch after months of silence. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to maintain the walls I'd built around my newfound peace. But another part, a softer, more forgiving part, typed out a response. Thanks, Jake. I'm doing okay. Take care of yourself. Sending that text felt like closing a book I'd been reading for too long. There was no going back, no desire to revisit old chapters. I was ready to write new ones, stories of my own making. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where the story would take me. Alright, let me paint the picture for you. I'm nestled in the heart of a bustling city, tapping away on keyboards, solving tech puzzles, day in and day out. Name's Lily, by the way. 32 and deep in the trenches of singlehood. Not for lack of trying, mind you. I've danced the dating dance more times than I care to admit, each time hoping the music doesn't stop on yet another dud. Dreams of family life and kids? Yeah, got those in spades. Reality? More like a deck stacked with jokers. So, there I was, ranting to my best bud, Jess, over coffee about my latest crash and burn. I'm done, Jess. Maybe I'm meant to be the cool aunt forever, not mom material. Jess, ever the optimist, shot me that I've got the solution look. Why don't you try online dating? Worked for me and Mark, she suggested, sipping her latte like she just dropped the mic. I scoffed. Online dating? That's like dumpster diving for love. But Jess, bless her stubborn heart, wasn't having any of it. Not all dumpsters, Lily. You just gotta find the right one. Give it a shot. Peer pressure's a thing, folks. So, I caved, setting up a profile on one of those dating sites, fully expecting a circus of clowns. At first, it was exactly that. Messages flooded in, each one making me more cynical than the last. Hey, beautiful, wanna see my comic book collection? Or, do you believe in love at first swipe? Just as I was about to chuck my laptop out the window, a message popped up. Not the usual drivel. This one was different. Saw you're into tech. Ever debate the merits of Python over Java over a cup of coffee? Now, that caught my attention. A guy speaking my language. I bit, replying with, only if you're ready to admit Python's superiority in certain applications. Meet Alex. Sales manager by day, charming nerd by, also day. He worked for his mom's company, something that usually would have had me running for the hills, but there was something about him. Easygoing, sociable, and didn't live in his mom's basement, a rarity in my dating history. We met up, and the connection was instant. Coffee turned into dinner, dinner into late-night walks, and before I knew it, 6 months had flown by. Then, out of the blue, he popped the question. Not over a grand gesture, but quietly, sincerely, during one of our night walks. Lily, I can't imagine my life without you. Marry me? I was stunned, elated, and a million other emotions. But mostly, I was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. Yes, I whispered, and the city lights seemed to dance just for us that night. So, here I am, engaged to a guy I met on the very platform I mocked, ready to start that dream family. Meeting Alex's mom, Eleanor, felt like being called into the principal's office long after you've graduated. You know you haven't done anything wrong, but the nerves kick in anyway. So there I was, standing on her doorstep, practicing my most charming smile while internally preparing for a siege. Alex squeezed my hand, mistaking my battle readiness for jitters. She's gonna love you, he whispered, but his voice lacked the conviction of a man betting on a sure thing. The door swung open, and there she stood, Eleanor. Not a dragon per se, but she had that look. You know the one, like she could read your life story at a glance and find it lacking. Lily, this is my mom. Mom, Lily. Alex did the intros like he was presenting his science project. Eleanor's eyes narrowed, taking me in. Lily. So, you're the one who's captured my son's heart. Her tone made it sound like I'd done it with dark magic. Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Hamilton. Alex speaks very highly of you. She waved off the formalities. Please, call me Eleanor. Let's not stand on ceremony. Her living room was like stepping into a magazine. Not a speck of dust or a pillow out of place. We sat, and the interrogation began. I hear you're in IT. That's a demanding field, she started, casual as if commenting on the weather. Yes, it is. But it's rewarding. I love the challenges, I said, trying to sound confident and not like I was defending my life choices. And how do you find the work-life balance? Alex tells me you're quite ambitious. Was that a hint of disapproval? I manage. We both do. It's about priorities, right? She hummed non-committally, sipping her tea like a queen, pondering her next move. Alex has always had a varied taste in women. What makes you different? Ouch. That was a jab. I glanced at Alex, hoping for a lifeline, but he was busy examining his tea as if it held the secrets of the universe. I'm not sure I have to be different. I shot back, a little more defensively than intended. I care about Alex. That should count for something. Eleanor leaned in, eyes sharp. Of course, dear. But you must understand, as his mother, it's my job to be cautious. Many have tried to, let's say, take advantage of our family's position. I wasn't sure whether to be offended or amused. With all due respect, Eleanor, I'm not interested in your family's position. I have my own career, my own goals. Alex is not a means to an end for me. There was a brief flicker of something in her eyes, respect, maybe? Or surprise? Hard to tell. Very well, Lily. We shall see. Time does have a way of revealing true intentions, she said, her voice soft, but carrying a weight that felt like a veiled threat. Alex finally found his voice as dessert was served. Mom, Lily's amazing. You'll see. We're good for each other. Eleanor smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. I certainly hope so, Alex. For your sake. The rest of the visit passed in a blur of polite conversation and thinly veiled barbs from Eleanor. As we left, Alex was apologetic, whispering assurances that it went better than expected. Better than expected? I couldn't help but laugh, albeit bitterly. Your mom's got a sharp tongue. I felt like I was on trial. Alex winced. She's protective, that's all. Give her time. She'll come around. I nodded, though doubts swirled like storm clouds. Meeting Eleanor was like venturing into a lion's den, armed with nothing but good intentions and a stubborn streak. After tying the knot, Alex and I settled into my apartment, transforming it from mine to ours with every shared laugh, argument, and makeup kiss. Life was good, or at least as good as it gets when you're navigating the newlywed phase alongside dodging the occasional curveball from family. Speaking of family, Eleanor, Alex's mom, threw us a fastball that could knock anyone off their feet. It happened during one of those obligatory family dinners at her place, which was more like a museum than a home. Every fork and knife had to be perfectly aligned, a metaphor for how Eleanor viewed life, I guess. Halfway through dinner, with a smile that was too tight to be genuine, she dropped her bomb. I've been thinking, she began, casting a glance between Alex and me. This apartment living is beneath you, Alex. And Lily, dear, you too, of course. Why don't you move into the mansion with me? There's more than enough room, and it would be beneficial for all of us. I almost choked on my wine. Alex, always the diplomat, responded before I could recover. Mom, that's really generous, but Lily and I are happy in our apartment. It's our space, and we're enjoying making it our own. Eleanor's smile faltered, but she quickly masked it with a sip of her wine. Oh, but think of the advantages. Besides, it would give us a chance to become closer, don't you think? The idea of being closer to Eleanor sent a shiver down my spine. Before I could formulate a polite but firm refusal, Alex squeezed my hand under the table, a silent plea for patience. We really appreciate the offer, Mom, but we've made our decision. We're staying put, he said with finality. Eleanor's eyes narrowed, and I knew this was far from over. But for the moment, she dropped the subject, moving on to less contentious topics like the weather and her garden club's latest drama. A few weeks after that dinner, Eleanor announced she was coming to see our apartment for the first time. Just a friendly visit, she claimed. Friendly my foot. I knew a reconnaissance mission when I saw one. The day arrived, and so did Eleanor, her entrance grandiose as if she were gracing a royal court instead of our humble abode. She greeted us with air kisses, then proceeded to inspect our apartment with the scrutiny of a drill sergeant. This is it, then, she said, her voice laden with a mix of disappointment and disbelief as she glanced around our living room. It's quite compact, isn't it? Alex started to respond, but I cut in, my patience already thinning. It's cozy, Eleanor, and we love it. She hummed, making her way through our space as if every step pained her. And this decor, eclectic, isn't it? A bold choice. I clenched my fists, feeling the anger bubble up. It's our home, Eleanor. We've put a lot of ourselves into it. Then came the coup de grace. As she peered into our kitchen, her nose wrinkled. And cleanliness? Is that not a priority for young couples nowadays? Or is this some trend I'm unaware of? That was the last straw. Listen, Eleanor, I said, my voice steady but seething. This trend you're talking about is called living. We might not have a mansion with staff to keep it spotless, but we keep our home clean and welcoming. That's more than enough for us. If you can't respect that, then maybe you should leave. The room went silent. Eleanor looked at Alex, then at me, and for a moment, I thought she might apologize. Instead, she straightened her jacket, her demeanor icy. Very well. I can see when I'm not wanted. Enjoy your home. With that, she left, her departure leaving a chill in her wake. 2 years into our marriage, and it felt like Alex and I were finally hitting our stride. He was the yin to my yang, helping out around the apartment without me having to nag, always ready with a hug or a kind word. But then, things started to shift, and not for the better. I'd been broaching the topic of kids more and more. I was 34, and that biological clock wasn't just ticking, it was booming like a gong. One evening, I decided to tackle it head-on. Alex, we need to talk about starting a family. I'm not getting any younger, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He sighed, the kind of sigh that said he'd rather be anywhere but here. Lily, we've been over this. It's too early to think about kids. We've got time. Time. That word echoed in my head. Did we really? Alex, I'm 34. In a few years, it might be too late. Don't you want kids? He avoided my gaze, focusing instead on some invisible spot on the table. Of course, I do. Just, not now. Work's been hectic. Hectic was an understatement. Lately, he'd been coming home late, if at all, claiming work was piling up. Weekends were no different, with him often dashing off after mysterious phone calls. One day, curiosity got the better of me. What's with all the secrecy? Who keeps calling? He looked cornered, then spilled it. It's my mom. She's been really ill, having seizures. I've been helping out. I was taken aback. Despite our rocky history, I felt a pang of concern. I'm sorry to hear that. Maybe I can help? It could be a chance for us to patch things up. His reaction wasn't what I expected. He got defensive, almost angry. No, she doesn't want to see you. Doesn't want your help. That stung, but it also made me suspicious. Why would he be so hostile about me offering help? After he left, supposedly to aid his ailing mother, I wrestled with whether to call Eleanor directly. My hand hovered over the phone for what felt like hours. In the end, fear of worsening her condition kept me from dialing. Alex's absences grew longer, his contributions to our joint accounts dwindled, leaving me to pick up the slack. Bills, groceries, you name it, I was covering it. And with each passing day, the man I married seemed to slip further away. Lily, I know things have been tough. I appreciate you handling everything, he said one night, looking worn and tired. Tough doesn't begin to cover it, Alex. I feel like I'm living with a stranger. And your mom? Are you sure there's nothing I can do? He just shook his head, a barrier rising between us. It's better this way. Trust me. Trust. A small word, but damn, it weighed a ton. And right then, I wasn't sure I could. The change in Alex was like a slow leak in a tire, gradual but undeniable. Nights spent alone in our bed became the norm, his side growing colder with each passing day. The sound of his voice was replaced by murmurs into his phone, always stepping out of the room, always whispering. It's Mom, he'd say. She needs me. But the gaps in our bank account told a different story. Suddenly, I'm playing the role of the breadwinner, juggling bills and groceries, watching my savings dwindle like ice in the sun. Over coffee, I vented to Jess, my go-to for unfiltered advice. He's hardly home, Jess. And when he is, it's like he's a million miles away. Plus, our finances are a mess. Jess raised an eyebrow, her skepticism palpable. Girl, this sounds shady. Have you thought about digging deeper? Maybe hire a PI? She half-joked, a smirk playing on her lips. I laughed, brushing off the idea. Yet, it lingered, gnawing at the back of my mind, a seed of doubt planted firmly in soil fertile with suspicion. Then, out of nowhere, Eleanor, the last person I expected a call from, reached out, suggesting we meet at a cafe. Curiosity piqued and desperation for answers swirling within me, I agreed. The Eleanor I knew was a fortress, her health the moat keeping us at bay. Yet, here she was, extending an olive branch. What could she possibly want to tell me? The morning air felt heavy as I walked into the cafe, a storm brewing in my heart. Eleanor sat there, looking every bit the picture of health, not the frail image painted by Alex's stories. As I sat down, her eyes locked onto mine, a sternness in them that immediately set me on edge. Why are you stopping Alex from seeing me, his own mother? She demanded right off the bat. I blinked, taken aback. What? That's not true. Alex told me he's been with you almost every day, taking care of you because you're sick. The color drained from her face, then came back in a flush of anger. Call him, Lily. Let's hear what he says about his whereabouts right now. My hand shook as I dialed Alex's number, my heart thumping loud in my chest. Alex, where are you right now? I asked, trying to mask the tremor in my voice. I'm on my way to the hospital with Mom. She's had another episode, he replied, his tone hurried and anxious. The words hung in the air, a lie so blatant it stung. I ended the call, turning to face Eleanor, who offered a sad smile and placed a gentle hand on my arm. Tell me everything, Lily, she urged softly. So, I spilled it all, the months of lies, the nights alone, the drained bank account. Each word felt like a betrayal, not just from Alex, but from the life I thought we were building together. Eleanor listened, her face a mask of sadness. He told me you didn't want to see me, that you were too busy with clinic visits, because you couldn't conceive. I stared at her, disbelief and anger swirling inside me. That's a lie. All of it. What's really going on, Eleanor? She sighed, a sound heavy with disappointment. Alex has always been restless. Always looking for something more. I threatened to cut him off unless he settled down, found a good woman, and started a family. I thought he'd changed when he brought you into our lives. The revelation hit me hard. All this time, our marriage, our plans for the future, it was just a performance for Alex. A way to keep his lifestyle without losing his inheritance. Eleanor's next words were a mix of anger and regret. He's been seeing other women, Lily. I didn't want to believe it, but it's true. The cafe around us faded into a blur as her words sank in. Betrayal, deeper than I'd ever known, coursed through me. The man I loved, the life I'd envisioned, it was all built on lies. What do we do now? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. We confront him, together. He needs to face the consequences of his actions, Eleanor said firmly, her resolve clear. How about we really see what he's been up to? Maybe hire someone to dig a little deeper? I was hesitant at first, but the anger bubbling inside me overrode any doubts. Let's do it, I agreed, feeling a mix of excitement and fear at the prospect of facing the ugly truth head-on. The detective we hired was a pro, unearthing details about Alex that made my skin crawl. He had been leading a lavish lifestyle on our dime, wining and dining various women, all while spinning US tales of family duty and illness. But the real kicker came when we got audio of Alex with one of his girlfriends, mocking Eleanor and me for believing his lies. They're just a couple of naive bugs, easily fooled, he laughed on the tape. That was the last straw. Eleanor and I, now united in our quest for justice, decided it was time for a confrontation. Armed with the evidence, we ambushed him at a bar downtown, where he was supposed to meet his latest fling. The look on his face when he saw us together was worth every penny we'd paid the detective. Eleanor was the first to let loose, her voice rising above the music and chatter. You're a disgrace, Alex. I never thought I'd see the day my own son would sink this low. Cheating, lying, and stealing from your own family. Her words were like bullets, and with each one, Alex seemed to shrink a little more. The crowd in the bar had gone silent, all eyes on us. I stepped forward, my heart pounding in my chest. And you, I said, facing Alex with all the fury I felt. You're going to pay for what you've done. Not just to me, but to your mother, to our marriage. I've got the divorce papers right here. I slapped them down on the table in front of him, along with the storage unit receipt. Everything you own is in a box to the left, buddy. Consider yourself served. Alex was speechless, his face pale, eyes darting between me and his mother. I can explain, he stammered, but Eleanor cut him off. Save it. You're cut off, Alex. No more money, no support. You've made your bed, now lie in it. Her voice was ice cold, the final nail in the coffin of their relationship. As we left the bar, the music started up again, but the night had lost its buzz for me. What mattered was the sense of closure, however bitter it tasted. Eleanor and I walked out together, not as enemies, but as allies, bonded by our shared betrayal. We'll get through this, she said, squeezing my hand. Yeah, I replied, looking back one last time at the man I once loved, now a stranger. We will. After the whole mess unraveled and the truth came out about Alex, things moved pretty fast. He ended up having to pay up for his lies, a kind of compensation for the heartache and chaos he caused. The divorce papers were signed, no looking back. And Eleanor, well, she cut him off completely, sticking to her word. It was a tough outcome for him, but he made his bed. Now, life's taken a turn I didn't see coming. Eleanor and we've sort of bonded through this storm. Funny how life throws you together with the most unexpected people. And here's the kicker, I'm expecting a baby. Yeah, amidst the chaos, a new life started growing, and Eleanor's over the moon about her upcoming grandchild. Just the other day, we were sitting in her living room, the one that used to intimidate me, planning for the baby's arrival. You know, Lily, Eleanor said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard. This baby, he's going to have the best of everything. We'll make sure of it. I couldn't help but smile, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. I can't believe I'm doing this. A baby, Eleanor. It's going to be a whole new adventure. Eleanor chuckled, that tough exterior melting away. You're stronger than you think, Lily. And you're not alone. We're in this together. It's strange how things turn out. The person I once thought of as an adversary is now one of my biggest supporters. Life's full of surprises like that. As for Alex, well, he's out of the picture, facing the consequences of his actions. I've moved on, focusing on the future, a future that's looking brighter every day, especially with a little one on the way. Eleanor's already spoiling him rotten, buying baby clothes, toys, and planning the nursery. He's going to be a fighter, just like his mom, she says, and I believe her. So, here I am, embarking on a new chapter. It's scary, sure, but I've got Eleanor by my side, and a little boy on the way who's going to know all about love, strength, and resilience. We talked about the future, about moving forward. Eleanor was keen on supporting a charity project for women who had gone through similar betrayals. I want to do something meaningful, she said. Help others rebuild, just like we're doing. I love that idea, I replied, feeling a spark of excitement for the first time in months. Count me in. It's time to turn this mess into a message. I'm Emma. My story isn't one of those fairy tales you hear about, but it's mine, and I've lived every bit of it. My life's been a mix of love, betrayal, and coming out on top when everyone else thought I'd be down for the count. From the jump, me and Mike, we were kind of the high school sweethearts you'd hear about but never really believe existed. He was all about football, the kind of guy who lived for the Friday night lights, and I was more the behind-the-scenes type, hanging with the girls' support group, cheering him on from the sidelines. Hey, Emma, he'd shout across the hallway with that grin plastered on his face. Catch the game on Saturday? And I'd roll my eyes, play it cool. Maybe, if I've got nothing better to do, I'd shout back, but we both knew I wouldn't miss it for the world. Mike's folks, they were gems, treating me like I was one of their own. We can't wait for you two to make it official, his mom would say every time I'd come over, her eyes all twinkling with the thought of us walking down the aisle. My folks were on board too, always had Mike's back, inviting him over for dinner, asking about his games, his life. It was all pretty cozy. Except, there was a bit of a snag in this picture-perfect setup, my sister, Sarah. For years my junior and totally smitten with Mike. It wasn't like she was subtle about it either. But instead of brushing it off, I felt bad for her. Lily and we had a complex thing going. She was my sister, and I loved her, but there was this tension, a rivalry that never seemed to go away. He's just so perfect, Emma. How do you do it? She'd ask, her voice a mix of admiration and envy. I tried to keep it light. Oh, come on, Lily. There's plenty of fish in the sea. Mike's not the only guy out there. But she'd just huff. Easy for you to say. He's head over heels for you. I tried to be there for her, but Mike, well, he didn't handle it as kindly. He'd laugh it off, make some snarky comment that'd just light a fuse between us. Come on, Mike, cut her some slack. I'd tell him after he'd made another dig at Sarah's expense. What? Can't she take a joke? He'd shoot back, all defensive, like he didn't get why it was a big deal. This one time, Sarah turned 16, and at her birthday party, with everyone there, she made this wish out loud. I wish to marry Mike. And then she blew out her candles like it was the most natural thing in the world to say. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Mike just coughed awkwardly, while I felt my face go hot with embarrassment and anger. That moment kind of broke something between me and Sarah. We didn't talk for a long while after that. The tension it caused, it was like a thick fog you couldn't see through. It wasn't just the wish, though. It was Mike's reaction, the way he laughed it off later when we were alone. Did you see her face? She really thought she had a chance. I couldn't wrap my head around how he couldn't see the hurt he was causing. It's not funny, Mike. She's my sister. You can't just mock her feelings like that. Ah, come on, Em. She'll get over it. They always do, he said, brushing it off like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing to me. This whole mess, it was a wake-up call in a way. Made me see the cracks in what I thought was a solid foundation. Looking back, I guess it was the start of understanding that love, it's complicated, messy, and sometimes, it pits you against the people you want to protect the most. The day I married Mike should have been the happiest of my life, and it was, mostly. But there was this undercurrent, a tension you could cut with a knife, all thanks to one person, my sister, Lily. As the wedding day approached, everyone was on a high. Mike's parents were over the moon, constantly fussing over the smallest details. "Emma, dear, you're going to be the most beautiful bride," Mike's mom would say, her eyes sparkling with tears of joy. And Dad, well, he was just Dad, trying to keep a tight lid on his emotions, but failing miserably. "I'm not going to cry. I'm not," he'd mutter, only to be caught wiping his eyes when he thought no one was looking. My folks were just as excited. Mom was all about the dress. "You look like an angel, Emma. Mike won't know what hit him when he sees you walking down that aisle." And Dad, ever the joker, "Better make sure that boy knows how lucky he is, or he'll have me to answer to." But Lily, she was a different story. Since that birthday wish fiasco, things had been tense between us. We barely spoke, and when we did, it was like navigating a minefield. The closer the wedding got, the frostier she became. On the day, as I was getting ready, Lily walked into the room. I hadn't expected her to say anything, but she surprised me. "Emma, can we talk?" Her voice was low, almost hesitant. I turned, keeping my emotions in check. "Sure, Lily. What's up?" She fiddled with the hem of her dress, avoiding my eyes. "Look, I know I've been difficult. And what I said at my birthday, it was stupid. I'm sorry, okay?" I sighed, the weight of the past few months heavy on my shoulders. "Lily, it's my wedding day. Can we not do this now?" "No, we're doing this. I need to say it. I was jealous, alright? I've always been. But seeing you now, so happy and beautiful, it's hard not to feel like the biggest jerk." Her words caught me off guard. It was the most honest I'd heard her in years. "Thanks, Lily. I just wish you could have realized that earlier, before all the drama." "Yeah, well, better late than never, right?" She managed a small smile, the first genuine one in a long time. The rest of the day passed in a blur. The ceremony was beautiful, everyone said so. Mike looked dashing, and when he saw me, his reaction was everything I'd hoped for. "God, Em, you're breathtaking," he whispered as I joined him at the altar. The reception was a hit, the music, the dancing, the laughter. It was perfect, except for the moments I caught Lily looking our way, her expression a mix of regret and something else I couldn't quite place. At one point, Mike leaned in. "Your sister, she's been staring all night. You think she's okay?" I glanced at Lily, then back at Mike. "Let's just enjoy our night, okay? Whatever's going on with Lily, it can wait." Life after the wedding was like waking up from a dream, the kind where everything's perfect, only to find reality waiting for you with a sledgehammer. Me and Mike, we were living the dream, or so I thought. Then came the kids, Joey and Ellie, our little bundles of joy and sleepless nights. It wasn't long before the cracks began to show. Money was tight, turns out love doesn't pay the bills. Mike started working extra shifts at the mall, coming home late, more exhausted and less like the guy I married. One evening, after a particularly rough day with the kids screaming nonstop and the washing machine breaking down, Mike walked in, looking like he'd been through the ringer. I was at my wit's end, covered in baby food and desperation. "Mike, thank God you're home. Can you take Ellie? She's been crying nonstop, and Joey's making a mess in the living room." Mike barely glanced my way, a grunt his only reply as he slumped onto the couch, shoes still on. That's when I lost it. "Mike, did you hear me? I need help here." He looked up, annoyance flashing in his eyes. "What do you want from me, Em? I've been on my feet all day. Can't I catch a break for 5 minutes?" "A break?" I was incredulous, gesturing to the chaos around us. "You think I've been on vacation here? This is 24/7, Mike. The kids need you. I need you. Mike stood up, his voice rising. And what about what I need? A little peace, maybe? Not to come home to this circus every night? The word circus hung between us, a grenade that had just gone off, leaving us staring at each other across the battlefield our home had become. Is that what your family is to you? A circus? My voice was a whisper, but the hurt must have been evident. Mike ran a hand through his hair, the fight going out of him. No, that's not what I meant. I'm just tired. We're both tired. But it wasn't just about being tired, was it? Things had changed, and we were drifting apart, each day a little more. The love was there, buried under layers of exhaustion and unspoken resentments, but it was getting harder to find. We patched things up, because that's what you do when you love someone, right? But those patches felt more like band-aids on a dam about to burst. Conversations about money, the kids, and how we were living became the norm. Mike's solution was to escape, to find solace at the bottom of a bottle or in the laughter of strangers at a bar. The quarrels got more frequent, nastier. We'd go at it over anything, the bills, the endless nights of crying children. And then, Mike started not coming home. The first time it happened, I told myself he'd crashed at a friend's. But then it became a pattern. Night after night, he'd disappear, only to stumble in at dawn, reeking of alcohol, with that look in his eyes. The look that said he was somewhere else, with someone else, in his mind. It tore at me. Every time he left, it was like he took a piece of us with him, a piece we'd never get back. The man I married, the one I thought I'd spend my life laughing and growing old with, was slipping through my fingers. And the worst part? I didn't know how to stop it, how to pull him back. The morning everything fell apart was like any other, except for the deafening silence that greeted me as I woke. Mike's side of the bed was cold. I checked every room, but he was gone. His clothes, his shoes, even his toothbrush, all vanished. My heart sank. This wasn't like the other nights. I tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. Mike, where are you? Please, come home. I pleaded into the phone, my voice breaking. There was no answer, just the mocking beep signaling the end of my message. Frustrated and scared, I called my folks, voice shaky. Mom, Dad, Mike's gone. His stuff's gone. Have you seen him? There was a heavy pause before Dad's voice, usually so full of life, came through quiet and strained. Honey, we haven't seen him. But there's more. Lily's missing too. My heart stopped. This couldn't be happening. What? Missing? Both of them? The room spun as I tried to process his words. Before I could gather my thoughts, my phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Lily. My hands trembled as I read her words, a bizarre mix of emojis and cold, hard betrayal. She and Mike were in love, she said. They'd left together. He didn't love me or our kids anymore. I stared at the screen, numb. This was a nightmare, a cruel joke. My sister, my husband, how could they do this to us? To me? The shock was palpable, a physical weight that pressed down on me. I called my parents back, voice a whisper. Lily sent me a message. They're together. She and Mike. There was silence on the line, a silence filled with shared disbelief and heartbreak. Then Mom, her voice breaking. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I have no words. Dad chimed in, his usual calm demeanor shattered. We're here for you, Emma. No matter what, we're here. Their words were a small comfort in the tsunami of betrayal that had just hit me. Mike and Lily had not only left me, but had chosen to do so in the most cowardly way possible. But through it all, there was a silver lining, my parents and Mike's. They stood by me like pillars, refusing to let me face this storm alone. Their support was unwavering, a constant in the chaos that had become my life. We've got your back, Emma. Always, Dad said during one of our many late-night calls, his voice a steady force in the midst of my turmoil. And Mary, Mike's mom, became my rock. He's made his choice, and so have we. You and the kids are our priority, Emma. We're family, through and through. Filing for divorce and stepping into the role of a single mom wasn't something I ever pictured for myself. Finding Mike to get any child support was like chasing a ghost. He was nowhere to be found. Those days were rough. Money was tight, and I leaned heavily on my folks and Mike's parents more than I'd have liked to admit. One evening, we were all sitting around the kitchen table at my in-laws, a kind of makeshift family council we'd come to rely on. That's when Mike's dad, who'd always had a knack for cutting straight to the heart of things, laid his cards on the table. "I've got some savings put aside," he said, his voice steady and serious. 120 grand. It's yours, for the kids." I was floored. That kind of generosity was overwhelming. "I can't accept that," I insisted, but the look in his eyes told me he wasn't about to take no for an answer. But then an idea sparked in my mind. What if we use that money to start something? Something that could benefit all of us? I was thinking aloud, my brain ticking over. Mike's mom, Mary, had always been a wizard in the kitchen. Her pastries were the stuff of legend. "How about a pastry shop?" I ventured. "Mary, you could lead the kitchen. I can handle the books, and we could have your dad oversee the business side of things." There was a pause as they mulled it over. Mary looked excited at the prospect, her eyes lighting up. "I'd love that," she said, the idea of getting back into her passion clearly appealing to her. "But," Mike's dad interjected, "if we're doing this, we do it right. I'll be the director in name, but the business, the ownership, it's yours, Emma." I couldn't help but smile at the proposition. "Deal," I said, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness at the adventure we were about to embark on. The road wasn't easy. Starting a business from scratch, especially a bakery, was fraught with challenges. There were days when I doubted everything, when the balance sheets looked more like obituaries for our dreams than anything promising. But I kept at it, pouring everything I had into making it work. Mary's pastries became as famous citywide as they were in our family gatherings, and before we knew it, what started as a single shop grew into several branches across the city. It was hard, grueling work, but bit by bit, our little bakery carved out a name for itself. Through it all, I stayed in the background, happy to let Mike's dad take the limelight as the face of the business. To the world, I was just the accountant, the woman crunching numbers behind the scenes. But in truth, I was the owner, the one calling the shots. We had turned a dream into a thriving reality, our confectionaries a staple in the city. I became a wealthy woman, not just in terms of money, but in the wealth of experience, the strength of family, and the sweet taste of success against all odds. One lazy Sunday afternoon, as I was balancing the books and relishing in the quiet hum of productivity, my phone pinged with a notification that made my heart skip a beat. It was a message from Lily. My stomach churned as I opened it, half hoping it was a mistake. But there it was, a message filled with emojis and a nonchalance that belied the depth of the betrayal. "Hey sis, guess who? Just thought I'd check in and show you how amazing life is on this side. Mike and I are living the dream. Bet you're still stuck in your little world, playing safe. Toodles. Kiss mark." The audacity of it left me reeling. The wounds she and Mike inflicted were deep, and here she was, poking them with a stick, flaunting her so-called blissful life in my face. I stared at the message, 1,000 retorts running through my mind, but in the end, I chose silence. Engaging with her would only drag me back into the mire I'd worked so hard to climb out of. But Lily wasn't done. She kept sending messages, each more taunting than the last. It was like she was trying to erase her own guilt by diminishing my achievements. Then, Mike joined the fray, sending me a friend request on social media along with a message that was like a slap across the face. "Hey Emma, long time no see. Just wanted to see how you're holding up without me. Must be tough raising the kids all on your own. Don't worry, Lily and I are having a blast. Take care." I couldn't believe the nerve of him, after everything he'd done, to mock my struggles and parade his betrayal as some sort of victory. I wanted to scream, to lash out and tell them both how wrong they were, how their selfishness had only made me stronger, made us stronger. But I knew that's exactly what they wanted, a reaction, any sign that their words had hit their mark. So, I did the one thing that felt right. I blocked them. No messages, no friend requests, nothing. It was the digital equivalent of slamming the door in their faces, and it felt good, liberating even. After a couple of weeks of eerie quiet, Lily started her old tricks again, bombarding me with messages. This time, she was flaunting her lavish lifestyle, sending me photos of her and Mike posing in front of expensive cars and at fancy resorts. I tried to ignore her, blocking each new account she popped up with, but then things took a nastier turn. Lily and Mike began leaving venomous reviews on our bakery's page, trashing the pastries and saying they were tasteless and made without talent. Reading those words felt like a punch to the gut. Not just because it was my bakery, but because they were indirectly slinging mud at Mary, my mother-in-law, whose baking was the heart and soul of our business. Fuming, I went to my in-laws to tell them what was happening. I found them in the living room, sitting down for a quiet evening. "You won't believe what Lily and Mike are up to now," I said, unable to hide my anger. When I showed them the reviews, Mike's dad, who'd always been the calm and steady type, lost it. "That's it. They've gone too far this time," he barked, his fists clenched tight. Mary, ever the peacemaker, laid a hand on his arm. Now, let's think this through. There's a better way to handle this," she said, her voice soothing but with a steely edge I hadn't heard before. That's when she came up with a plan that sounded just crazy enough to work. "Emma, dear, why don't you tell Lily that we're planning to announce our will soon? Let's see how she and that no-good husband of hers react to that." I was taken aback by the suggestion. "You mean, trick them into thinking they're getting something?" Mary nodded, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Exactly. If they're so interested in our business, let's give them something to really talk about." It felt risky, but after everything that had happened, a part of me was itching for some kind of payback. "All right, I'll do it. Let's see how they like being on the receiving end for a change." I sent the message to Lily, telling her about the supposed will announcement. The part of me that still cared for my sister felt a twinge of guilt, but it was quickly overshadowed by the thought of finally getting back at them for all the pain they'd caused. Now all we had to do was wait and see how the prodigal sister and her husband would respond to the bait. Would they come crawling back, thinking they were about to inherit a piece of the bakery that had become my life's work? The thought gave me a sense of anticipation I hadn't felt in a long time. I read the message, a bitter smile spreading across my face. "Get ready, Lily. You and Mike are about to find out what happens when you mess with family." As the day of their return drew closer, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. This was more than just a confrontation, it was a chance to finally close a painful chapter of my life. And I was ready, come what may. The day they came back felt like stepping into a twisted reunion. Lily and Mike pulled up in a car that screamed money they didn't have, their clothes just as loud. They strolled into my in-laws' house as if they owned the place, arrogance dripping from every pore. Mike didn't even glance at his kids, my babies who'd grown up so much since he'd last seen them. Instead, he went straight for the kill. "I hear there's a will in the works. Time to hand over the bakery, don't you think?" His voice was all smug entitlement. I couldn't help but smile, the irony too rich to ignore. "You running a bakery? Please. You wouldn't know a pastry from a pie unless it hit you in the face." That got under his skin. He snapped. "Once I'm in charge, you're out. First order of business." And then my father-in-law, bless his heart, dropped the bomb. "You? Running the bakery? Son, you're looking at the real owner. This whole business belongs to Emma, down to the last penny," he said, pointing at me. The shock on Mike and Lily's faces was almost comical. But I thought. Lily started, her voice trailing off as the reality sank in. "Well, you thought wrong," my mother-in-law chimed in, her voice steady but firm. Everything we have is going to Emma and the kids. You too? You've got nothing coming. Lily's meltdown was epic. Tears, accusations, the whole 9 yards. We need that money. Everything we have is maxed out. The car, the clothes, it's all on credit. And then, in a move that should have surprised no one, Mike showed his true colors. Turning to me with eyes full of nothing but greed, he said, "Emma, babe, I made a mistake. I'll dump her and come back. We can be a family again." The silence that followed was deafening. Lily exploded, calling him every name in the book, while I just watched, the sadness in my heart making way for something else, relief. My in-laws didn't waste any time. "Get out," was all my father-in-law had to say, his voice cold as ice. They left, a storm of hurt and betrayal in their wake, but the house felt lighter somehow, as if their leaving had lifted a curse. The next day, my phone rang. It was my folks, letting me know Lily had shown up at their doorstep, begging for money. They turned her away, just like we had. "Enough is enough," they said. And they were right. Sitting there, phone in hand, I couldn't help but reflect on the whole sordid saga. From love to betrayal to this, victory, if you could call it that. I realized that what I'd won wasn't just a battle over money or a bakery. I'd reclaimed my life, my dignity. I'd shown my kids the value of standing up for oneself, of not caving under pressure or manipulation.